Hello.
Hey.
All right. I have a question for you.
All right. What's this question?
I'm starting out early with the questions. This one is just, have you ever had a migraine?
No, I haven't. I've had like headaches, but not very often. Like I used to have headaches when I was a kid. That's how I found out like I couldn't see.
Oh, yeah. Gosh,
I just thought you were supposed to have to squint at things that were far away.
You were the worst.
Until it started hurting, and then there's like, oh yeah, you can't see, dude. This is what you're supposed to do. Okay. So
Yeah.
But I haven't had migraines, no.
So, in true Christine fashion, I'm actually not sure if I get migraines. I'm currently Googling what is a migraine. Okay. I think I did have one. I call it a migraine whenever I start getting sensitive to light, or I'm just like, I can't look at anything. I just want to put on my sleepy mask.
When you say you think you've had one, do you mean once or like do you have
Oh,
those?
like several times.
Okay.
I think I get them. But I had one yesterday. And so we were doing the crossword and we like had hooked up Kyle's computer to the TV. And it was a really fun theme. So I like didn't want to stop doing it. And so I was like, Kyle, I'm going to need you to not make fun of me for this. And I went and got my poor sad purse, which hasn't seen the light of day in months. And I got out my sunglasses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I have them right here, actually, so you can see at least. This is what I got to look like at night
Inside.
doing a crossword. For the
Wow.
listeners, they're these big, glamorous red sunglasses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like a lady in the 70s going to the beach, you know?
I know. I told Kyle, I'm like, I feel like I'm like a rich white woman. I just need like a big floppy hat. And like it affected him too, because like we would be doing this crossword and he would look over at me and just start laughing. He's like, I'm sorry, it just looks like you're on drugs.
Oh man, that's
But
good.
yeah, that was my evening, is just determination to finish that crossword, and we did, and it was very fun.
That's intense. No, I guess
a good theme.
the only equivalent I have to that is having been hung over and wearing sunglasses inside. You know, it's like
I've never
11
reached
or
that
something,
level.
The light's beaming in through windows, and I'm just like, no, I don't want it.
Yeah, so that's what happened to me yesterday. But I'm good now. I went to bed early, and I'm refreshed and ready to learn.
Ready to learn. Good. That's
Yeah.
how you should be for our show.
Yeah, I got my 3-ring binder, my
your pocket
pencil
protector?
grips. Yes, I don't have pockets, but I have a pocket protector just in
Good.
case.
You got that, your slide rule, you're ready to go.
I'm going to measure all this communism.
Yeah, you got to measure it and, I don't know, do something else with it. I don't really know what you use slide rules for, but I think they're like
I
the
don't know
old
either.
calculator or something. So what do you want to learn about today?
I want to learn about Russia.
About Russia. Okay, Russia's
Yeah.
a country. It's it's the largest by geographical land area. It's ruled by President Vladimir Putin.
I forgot that he was a president.
That's not what you were actually asking, was it?
No, I was asking what the fuck happened over there. What's their deal with communism?
What's their what's their deal with communism? Okay, so I do have some further questioning of your question.
Yeah.
When you say what's their deal with communism, like why? You know, like where are you coming from with this question, or kind of what are you trying to address with it? You know?
Okay. So my question, I guess, is self-serving in that whenever people like myself will say things like, yeah, I think communism sounds cool. You know, a common rebuttal is, well, Russia tried it and it didn't work. And I want to know, did they try it and did it not work?
Okay, awesome. Yeah, exactly. I definitely know where you're coming from with that. Nowadays, yeah, people will say, oh, that's what the Soviet Union did. That was bad. Or they'll say, you know, what about Venezuela? Or, you know,
Or Cuba.
Cuba, North Korea, China, you know, any place that is in some way nominally socialist or communist. Yeah, you'll get that criticism of, that was bad, don't do it.
Exactly. And I want to know why was it bad? And yeah.
And so what did Russia do? Was that bad? Was that communism?
Exactly.
You know, what's the deal? Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. All right. So what did Russia do? And this is going to be a very brief overview because, like, I think we mentioned, this can get super in depth, like you said.
Yeah, like whole college courses are taught on this.
Yeah. So we're not going to have you memorize a bunch of names or anything like that. That's too much. I mean, we can't do that. We don't have the time. We're just going to hop right in and give you a brief overview of kind of what the Russian Revolution was, what all happened there, what the Russians did after that, what the Soviet Union was like as a result.
Cool. And I'm thinking, like, we can definitely in the future take some of these topics and do whole episodes on them if we want to. But I think it'd be really good, I mean, both for listeners and for me, just to have a general timeline of like, okay, what happened?
What happened, yeah. And yeah, let's do that. Okay, so a couple of weird points to clear up beforehand, because when we get to that point, I don't want you to be too confused, okay?
Okay. Prepare.
So number one, there's a calendar difference.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, the reason it comes into play is because the Russians will call part of this thing, or historians will call part of this thing, the February Revolution and the October Revolution.
Okay, are those the same?
No, they're different things in the revolution, but like they're misnamed based on the actual dates of our current calendar. Because they were still using, before the Soviets took over, they were still using the old Julian calendar.
Yeah.
And then once, they took over, they were like, this old bullshit calendar, it's gone. We're going to use the Gregorian calendar, which is what everybody uses now. There's 18 days difference, so it fucks with the dates.
That's really annoying. That's an inconvenient move over.
Yeah. So historians use the old dates, basically, until the revolution happens, and then you start using the new dates. Because
that's weird.
The calendar changes.
Okay.
That's dumb. It's dumb.
Yeah.
But usually they'll say old style or whatever to refer to the
old style. Classic.
Yeah. Classic dates. Yeah. Another weird point is the city of St. Petersburg is what it's called today. And that's what it was called in Tsarist times before World War I.
Okay.
World War I happens and they're fighting the Germans and they're like, St. Petersburg sounds too German. We're going to call it Petrograd.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that. And I've always wondered, like, what's that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Petrograd. And then when the Soviets take over, they're like, a city named after Tsar Peter? No, that's too Tsarist. So they rename it Leningrad.
Oh, my God. That's
all
great.
Right? And so it's that during the Soviet era. And then when the Soviets fall, Russia's back in charge. And they're like, a city named after Lenin, too communist. We're going to rename it St. Petersburg. So
that's hilarious.
A full cycle.
These poor people having to update their mailing addresses.
I lived in St. Petersburg and then Petrograd. Okay, so I don't know what the convention is. I'm just going to call it whatever it was at the time. So
okay, cool.
And we'll
they're all the same.
Yep, those three equal each other.
All right, cool.
All right, weird points out of the way. Let's hop right in with the prelude to the revolution. It kind of sets some stuff up, and it actually happens years before this, but it kind of gives you the big picture of what was going wrong with society then.
Okay.
And it happens in 1905. There's an attempted Russian Revolution in 1905. All right. Lenin calls it the Great Dress Rehearsal for a Revolution. We're not going to get too much into detail, but Russia had a lot of fucking problems.
Okay.
They were ruled by the Tsar, an absolute monarchy. Mm-hmm. And their society was like kind of old and corrupt in terms of who was in power. Peasants were starving while, the rich were doing fine. They had just lost a big war to Japan called the Russo-Japanese War.
Oh.
The economy was in shambles. The proletarians were just kind of getting started growing and agitating for more stuff. And student radicals being obnoxious, shouting slogans, all that was happening. They had like kind of a mini revolution, and the Tsar was forced to create something called the Duma.
How do you spell Duma?
Duma is D-U-M-A.
Okay. I'm not actually taking notes. It's more for my help, my visuals.
For your help, for nerdier listeners or, kinesthetic listeners who like to take notes as we go along.
Yeah.
When I say nerdy, by the way, that's not pejorative at all.
No, that's a good thing. I'm a big old nerd.
We're nerds.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry, what year was this? 1905?
1905. Yeah.
Okay, so I just Googled. So I watched Fiddler on the Roof recently, and it takes place in Russia. And you're talking about student radicals, and one of the characters is like a student radical. Like, you would like him. He was cool.
Nice.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's on Amazon Prime. It's like included with it.
Okay. I think I will.
yeah.
I feel very uncultured for admitting to listeners that I've never watched this.
I hadn't until like 2 weeks ago. I'm just trying to watch more musicals because I really like them.
Yeah.
But I've only ever watched like 2, so I'm catching up. I like to say that I should have been a theater kid, but I was a band kid. So
Yeah, you fit the bill.
yeah, thank you. you mean queer?
Oh yeah, fair enough. But
But yeah, no, I think I'm a little more set up for this having watched that, because they were like a super poor village, and like it's about like the pogrom. I don't know how to say it. Pogrom. Because like Jews were run out. But yeah, it's a good setup.
So during Fiddler and the Roof times,
Yes.
the Tsar has to create the Duma, which basically they forced him to create kind of a Congress,
Okay.
like a legislative body, right? It's like the lower house of it. It's actually kind of elected, and people get to, elect representatives to go advise the Tsar. It's only like advisory.
Who can vote?
Male citizens over 25 years of age.
Nice.
Excluded women, soldiers, and officers.
Oh, cool. Wait, why would they do that?
Why would they exclude soldiers and officers?
Yeah, that seems weird.
I don't know. I don't think that they're supposed to vote, because they're just supposed to serve maybe the government all the time. They're
They're not
just
supposed to
be
have
loyal.
like opinions. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe.
That's
That sounds like
fucked
a
up.
good reason. Good reason, quote unquote.
Yeah, not a good reason. Cool. So some people could vote, classic.
Right, yeah. And it gets worse from there. It starts out that way, which is pretty good by their standards, but it gets less democratic as time goes on. The Tsar and his friends kind of pull some bullshit and keep trying to weaken it. So later on, like between then and 1917, when the actual revolution breaks out, it gets to where it's like the Tsar can basically nominate half of the positions for himself. And then they elect, different groups of society, like the
Okay.
church, the whatever, they get to elect the nobility. They get to elect people to the rest of the seats.
So it just becomes another aristocracy.
Yeah,
at that point.
And that's the most democratic thing they had. They had something similar to like an upper house, or kind of like our Senate, but wasn't elected at all, called the State Council. And that was just like powerful lords of the realm getting to, advise the Tsar. So
Okay.
you had like super anti-democratic and then like pretty not democratic.
Yeah.
below it.
So sorry, maybe I missed this.
Yeah.
So why did they make him start the Duma? Is it because people were complaining?
Yeah. Oh, like there was
Okay.
there was basically revolt in the streets. You had
Okay,
people.
got it.
You had strikes. You had workers out in the street. You had civil unrest, and the democratic reformers, people who wanted this sort of a thing to happen, went to the Tsar and said, "The only way you're gonna, keep power, keep the country together, is to give in a little bit and do this."
Okay.
So this was seen as a big concession. Socialists at the time, a lot of them were like, "This is still bullshit," but like bourgeois liberals and stuff were
Yeah.
kinda
Oh, yeah.
like,
They're like, wow, we did it.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
That was in 1905.
Hey, I
Yeah.
have an even stupider question.
Go for it.
This is the Tsar guy from Anastasia, right?
The Tsar guy from Anastasia, what was his name?
Nicholas.
Nicholas II. Yeah, Tsar
Yeah,
Nicholas II.
with the
That's
big
him.
mustache.
He's the guy that looks like King George V because he was his
He
cousin.
does.
Yeah.
He looks exactly. Oh, they were cousins.
They were cousins. Him and Wilhelm II, the Kaiser of Germany. They were all cousins.
That's crazy. Man, family reunions would be crazy. Just like, just a little mini UN.
There's a great correspondence between them in the opening of the First World War. Mm-hmm. And they write letters to each other, Kaiser Wilhelm and Tsar Nicholas II.
Weird.
But they basically
They're
write
buds.
letters to us. It's like, dear cousin, like.
Yeah.
They're
That's
just
so weird.
yeah. That's the guy, though,
Curtis.
from Anastasia.
Okay.
And that's the prelude to this. The reason Lenin calls it the dress rehearsal for it is because things kind of pan out so similarly in the beginning. Mm-hmm. With the Russian Revolution of 1917. That's where we'll jump to next.
Okay.
Life was, yet again, or continued to be shitty for Russia.
Okay.
And in between there, they got themselves into World War One.
Yeah. What did Russia do during World War One?
Well, they were fighting with, on the side of the Allies,
Okay.
which is the side that the United States is eventually on.
Yeah.
1914, war breaks out.
Yeah.
Archduke Franz Ferdinand gets killed. Europe descends into chaos, descends into warfare. Germany, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire versus everyone else.
From what I understand about World War One, you can tell me this is not true. It sounded like everyone had a bunch of treaties with everybody else, and that's why everyone had to get involved. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Typically, when a fight breaks out, you have people saying, oh, lucky you're holding me back or whatever. In this case, everyone dragged everyone else in. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it got messy.
It was a big brawl. Yeah. And it was like minor countries that did this initially. But yeah, like you said, everybody had alliances. So you end up with a continent and then eventually worldwide conflict. Russia was in it from the beginning on the side of England, France, the Allies. Eventually, America gets in 1917, too, on the side
We
of the
love
Allies.
to show up late to a party
Right? Yeah.
and then claim victory.
We're really good at that.
We really are.
So Russia's in it, and they suck. They are, like, really bad.
Okay.
They lose nonstop. They just keep losing. Like, it's impressive. They are, they were terrible. You just kept getting beat. People get, millions of Russians are dying on the front. You've got food shortages. I mean, that can happen in a war, Meanwhile, of course, okay, people are starving and they're wearing rags on their feet. The soldiers are. Mm-hmm. Do you think that the Tsar and the aristocracy are starving, or they have rags on their feet?
They're probably doing fine.
Yeah, people still see the opulent parties at the Winter Palace and all that,
Yeah.
They have more and more crackdowns as people start complaining about the way the war is going. The government says, fuck you, stop complaining, locking people up in jail, all this,
Oof.
Don't demonstrate. What are you doing? This is Russia. Be patriotic.
That's not a good look.
The Tsar is here, sent by God to, look after your interests. And
Yeah, was
protect
Russia
you.
like a religious monarchy?
It wasn't in the sense of saying the Tsar is a god, but they had a religious outlook on it.
Okay.
That the old style, absolute monarchy style of the king is God's representative.
Yeah.
And he is, playing his God-ordained role to
Okay, gotcha.
those people. Yeah.
Okay.
And there was a big loss of confidence in general, basically because of how badly the war was being run. Initially, people oftentimes said, oh no, if only the Tsar knew how bad his advisors were, he would help us, because they kind of bought in to this idea of the Tsar being a good guy looking out for them. They just thought, oh, he has really bad people running things for him. But as the war dragged on, it was clearer and clearer that, no, the dude doesn't know what he is doing. He's bad at it. At some point, the war was going so badly that he went out to personally lead the troops or whatever, which all it meant was he would go to field hospitals and go out there and visit people and stuff and scrutinize the general's plans. But it really, put more of the blame on his shoulders for how badly things were going. People were like, damn, Nicholas, come on, this is bad, yo, and you're out there doing it. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah. Shit was bad, and then they had a mini tryout, and then shit got worse with the war, and that's where we are.
Yeah. Couple other things that some people cared about. This is mainly aristocrats, but have you ever heard of Rasputin?
Yes. He's the spooky guy. He did lots of weird sex things. He lived forever, couldn't die.
Yeah. A lot of things are kind of embellished with Rasputin.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, mystic. He had weird faith healing techniques to help the hemophiliac son of the Tsar.
I read that they were just feeding him aspirin, and he's like, hey, don't do that. Because it thins his blood or whatever. And he's like, hey, you shouldn't give him that.
That's a good recommendation not to do that then.
Yeah.
I guess he knew a little bit. I didn't know that though. The Tsar also, so people were suspicious about him and having a corrupting influence on the Tsar's family. The Tsar's wife, Alexandra, was German by birth. So conspiracy theories flew around that he was, that's why they were intentionally losing the war was because, family connections. But all this served to kind of delegitimize the Tsar. Not only in the eyes of the workers and the peasants who were literally suffering, and saying, we don't want to die. Yeah. But in the eyes of the liberals and the bourgeoisie who were like, you're incompetently running the state and you're disgraceful sort of thing. They're not materially suffering necessarily, but they think it's bad. Yeah. So even they were kind of against him by that point. And then you have in March 7th, or I guess, February the 22nd in the old calendar. That's why it's called. This is the February Revolution we're getting into. The largest industrial plant in Petrograd went on strike. The workers there, they went on strike. They were like, fuck this. We're out here working. We're out here getting a slice of bread for our families a day, that sort of thing. We're out here starving and these fat cats are raking it in. We're not going to do it. So they go out on strike. And the next day, they went on a strike. They didn't know how long that was going to last, but the next day was International Women's Day, which was already by then a thing. March 8th, our calendar, thousands of women go out on strike in Petrograd, out there demonstrating, protesting also. And this turns into a protest and a demand for bread to feed their families, to feed people.
I wish we did that for Women's Day now instead of just fucking McDonald's turning their M upside down or whatever.
Oh,
did you hear about that? Yeah, they're like, we did it for women. Yeah, that's sad.
Man, yeah. A far cry from the activism of the Russian Revolution. You have thousands of women going out on strike and they stand with the striking workers. This just balloons into a massive general strike. They shut the city down. Petrograd is basically unable to operate. Workers, students, everybody just goes out there. And it turns from demanding bread. You start seeing signs saying, down with the war, down with the Tsar.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, it just, these feelings, like the reason we had this set up before was these feelings were already there.
Yeah, it's been years.
They were bubbling. They were ready. They knew something was wrong. And now this is kind of catalyzing it.
Yeah.
The Tsar called in troops to quell the rebellion. The troops were ordered to put it down, to fire on people. Some of them did. Most of them did not. Most of them mutinied. Instead, they shot their officers and joined with the protesters or just left. So the uprising got way out of control. I mean, now you have the military joining on their side, kind of.
Yeah, that's cool.
And the Tsar, basically, his advisors went to him and said, we're fucked, dude. I mean,
we're done. Game over.
The only way to save the country, to save the war effort, to keep everything from falling completely apart, is if you abdicate.
Damn.
And at this point, the Tsar was a very arrogant dude. Mm-hmm. But at this point, I think it was clear to him that this is the fucking capital getting shut down. These guys are not far away. They're right next to where he is. He's like, oh man. So he abdicated. He nominated his brother to, take the throne. Okay. And his brother said, nah, dude, I'll do it if the people want me to.
That's a good call.
And so the Romanovs were done. 300-year dynasty ended. The Tsar and his family put under house arrest.
Okay.
That was called the February Revolution.
Okay.
At that time, when the Tsar stepped down, the Duma was still around, and a section of them declared themselves to be the provisional government.
Ooh, okay.
So they were.
That's probably going to go great.
Right, yeah. This is since we know there's another revolution coming. These guys are basically the temporary state until they can elect a new assembly and make a new constitution and have like an official Russian government,
Okay.
But they're like the temporary government. All right. That's what happens in the February Revolution.
Got it.
Tsar falls. The provisional government takes power.
Cool.
There was also, at that time, a group called the Petrograd Soviet. Okay. So they're in Petrograd, St. Petersburg. And they were, the word Soviet just means council.
Oh, okay.
And they were a group of workers, soldiers, peasants, the people living in the capital, representing themselves, basically, trying to govern themselves, or
Okay, cool.
making decisions for themselves. They had a lot of power within the city of Petrograd. They kind of ran things there. The Petrograd Soviet did. And this is a situation called dual power.
Okay.
You may have heard this in leftist circles before, the idea of dual power.
No.
So dual power is referring to this particular stage, but sometimes people like extrapolate and say, what if we had dual power in a separate?
So like having a government, but also having worker-led stuff?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, I got it.
Yeah. You have a government trying to do good worker type things politically, but you also have direct workers rule in the form of, Soviets or workers' councils.
Okay.
That's what they had for a while. The provisional government was more bourgeois. They were more cautious, and they were more constitutional, rule of law based people,
Okay.
reformers. And the Soviets were more radical, more democratic, more proletarian. The problem was both of these groups initially stayed in World War I.
Okay.
So if you recall, like a lot of the protests were about, hey,
War
World
about
War
the war.
I fucking sucks. Let's
Yeah.
not be in it. Well, they stayed in it.
Well, dang.
And so it leaves room for some cool kids to come in and say, fuck all that. Let's get out.
Yeah.
You got Lenin coming in. Vladimir Lenin. Heard of this guy?
I have.
All right.
I get all the Russian dudes mixed up, by the way.
So Vladimir Lenin is
He's the bald one. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the goatee.
I think he's the only prominent, bald one. He's got the goatee. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he had been exiled by the Tsar. The Germans, thinking, hey, let's fuck up the Russians, smuggled him into Russia.
Oh, I love that. That's juicy.
Yeah. And, this would come back to bite them way later.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Or to bite their successor state anyway.
Yeah.
But he gets smuggled into Russia, and he comes in there and says, fuck the provisional government, man. These guys are lame. They're staying in the war. They're bourgeois. They don't care about you. They're bad. Never work with them. He says, all power to the Soviets, all power to that, to workers' councils deciding for themselves. And he has a catchy slogan. All right. He says, peace, land, and bread.
Hey, those sound like good things. I'm into it.
That's what we're about. Your children are dying in the war. Peace. You're a peasant and the lords are ruling it over you. Land. You're starving in the streets. Bread. That's what we want. That's what we're about.
That sounds great.
The cool thing from their perspective was Lenin and his party, the Bolshevik party.
Okay.
It's kind of like a faction in a party, but whatever. They were kind of the only game in town that had all along been like, fuck the provisional government.
Okay. So wait, where did the Bolsheviks come from, I guess?
They were part of the Russian Social Democratic Party.
So I guess what I'm asking is how can you have parties when there was this provisional government? They weren't in that government, right? They were just hanging out in the streets, doing their own thing.
Yeah, they were. They were illegal.
Okay.
The Russian Social Democratic Labor Party was the big party. They had factions, and the Bolshevik was one of these factions.
Okay.
When you have the provisional government, some of them tried to take part in it, and some of them did not. The Bolsheviks said, fuck that. But other socialist parties and stuff did take part in those elections.
Okay.
But yeah, they were kind of the only ones who all along were no, this is bullshit. Let's fight for ourselves.
Yeah.
Instead of joining these lame government guys. But anyway, the big picture is the provisional government keeps trying to fight World War I. The Bolsheviks say, you guys are losers. And the war kept, of course, going badly.
Yeah.
People kept dying. A guy named Kerensky takes power for the provisional government. He becomes prime minister. He was a soldier, and he was very moderate. He, was nominally a socialist, but he wanted to chart a middle ground course. Kind of slowly reform things. He also kept Russia in the war.
Whoops.
Eventually, after some more antics, one of the generals of the provisional government marched on Petrograd, took some troops to go take Petrograd back from the Reds. And Kerensky got scared at this point. So the prime minister guy, he got scared at this point and begged the Bolsheviks to help defend the city.
Oh, damn.
He released some of them from jail, some of them had been jailed at that Petrotsky. He had been put in jail. He released him to help defend the city against this rogue general of his. And all this did was it made the Bolsheviks look cool as fuck. Like, everybody was like, damn, these guys, like, whoa, they're where it's at. Railroad workers started striking and joining with the Soviets. And the Bolsheviks, previously just a little minority party within the larger party, actually at this point gained control, like a majority of the Petrograd Soviet. So like now they were the ones in charge of that half of dual power.
Oh, so the Bolsheviks are part of the Soviets.
Yeah, they become part of it. Yeah, they were a fringe of the Soviet, but then by this point they had proven themselves in the streets.
Yeah.
And gotten such legitimacy that people were like, no, these are the real guys.
These guys they know what's up.
Yeah, they're not posing.
Okay, cool. So that's what I was asking about. Like, how can they be, like, what? They're a party for what? Yeah, but they're part of the Soviets. Okay, cool.
They're part of the Soviets, yeah. So they're never part of the provisional government thing.
Yeah.
They're kind of a rogue group.
Okay.
Lenin at this point says, all right, we gotta move. And this is where you get to the October Revolution. Okay, so we had the February Revolution. Tsar deposed, provisional government takes power. And in between, you have the dual power system, where the provisional government's still kind of fucking around. The Soviets are directly running things and gradually gaining more power. Within that, the Bolsheviks are gaining more power through showing people that they're fighting for them. And then you have the October Revolution.
All right. What happens then?
October 25th of the old calendar. That's why it's called the October Revolution. November 7th, actually.
Close enough.
The Bolsheviks strike. Okay, it's starts out kind of as a coup, a small group taking power, and morphs into a more popular movement as well. The Bolshevik Red Guards. These are like militia.
Okay.
They stormed key points of Petrograd and captured them. Bridges, ports of entry, that sort of thing. And they storm the Winter Palace where the provisional government was.
Yeah.
Kerensky flees, gets the fuck out. He actually does so really quite sneaky / cowardly in a diplomatic car with American flags on the front.
Oh, what a butt.
Yeah, they sneak him off to one of the embassies or something like that.
That's hilarious.
To get him out. Lenin, they take the Bolsheviks take the palace. Lenin announces that the provisional government is out.
All right.
Russia becomes the Russian Soviet Republic.
All right.
Immediately, the Bolsheviks go to get out of World War I.
Okay.
They sign a treaty with the Germans called the Brest-Litovsk Treaty, which is basically surrendering. Like it's it's got terms to it. Like, hey, we agree to give you this huge amount of land, and we're out to see you. We're not fighting anymore.
Oh shit. Okay.
No, they lost a ton of land.
Did they?
In that, yeah. And initially when I think it's Trotsky maybe was the one negotiating it. Trotsky is not bald. He's kind of got crazy black hair. He's got like a pointy mustache and a pointy goatee part.
Yeah.
He's got little round glasses.
Yes, little glasses guy. Okay, so what I know about Trotsky is I watched a movie where some teenager thought he was Trotsky, and it was like in modern times. It was really fun. That's all I know about him. It was really funny.
That's wild. I got to watch that.
Yeah, I think it was just called Trotsky. It was good. It was weird.
He was the one, I think, negotiating this, and he was pretty much offended by what he received, but he brought it to Lenin anyway, and Lenin was like, this is obscene.
Yeah.
But we won out of the war, so they did eventually agree to that. And they were done with World War I, Peace accomplished.
They did it. Check off the list.
And at that point, they descend into the Russian Civil War.
Oh, no.
Yeah. The Bolsheviks took power, mainly in Petrograd, Moscow area, and they're not too far away from each other in terms of Russian geography, which is huge. They take power there, and the old Tsarist elements, the old supporters of the provisional government, supporters of liberal bourgeois democracy, all these different factions, from
all
old monarchists to that, everyone who doesn't like the Bolsheviks taking power are now against the government.
Okay.
This is a big war.
Yeah.
And it's super complicated.
Okay. Everybody fights.
Everybody fights. To kind of color code it, because historians do this. You got the Red Army, all right, the Bolshevik faction. But you also have the White Army.
Oh.
All right, these are the old Tsarists, the monarchists, that sort of thing. And to some extent, the provisional government kind of team up with them, that sort of thing. You have the Black Army, which referred to kind of an anarchist group in Ukraine and that region. Mm-hmm. Historians kind of wrestle with what they were, if they were just bandits or if they were like actually if it was like a warlord situation or if it was actually kind of a more autonomous commune. It'd be an interesting episode to do at some point.
Yeah.
Looking at those guys because it's a completely different means.
I'll add to the list.
Yeah. But that's the Black Army. The Green Army, you had these like peasant groups and the peasant groups basically, they were kind of cool. They were just saying, no, fuck you guys. We're governing ourselves over here. Leave us alone.
Okay.
Yeah, foreign armies, other just countries coming in.
Just to fuck with it?
Mainly the Allies, Great Britain, France.
Wait, what were they doing there?
Well,
were they mad that they signed with Germany?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They were mad that Russia dropped out of the war, gave Germany a bunch more land, and were worried that Germany was just going to like swoop troops into there, start up a new industrial base, and turn them in.
Oh, okay.
So they were trying to secure that area initially. And one of their objectives was it would be nice if the Bolshevik government was overthrown.
Okay.
They wanted that to happen.
Why?
Because then they could put in like some monarchist or liberal government who would side with them. But the Bolsheviks definitely wouldn't side with them.
No, yeah, because they didn't want to do war.
Yeah. The Soviets later on kind of characterize this and say all the countries of the West invaded us and tried to overthrow our government because they didn't want they didn't want there to be a communist government. And that's kind of what I assumed going into researching this a little bit. Is like, yeah, that sounds like something we would do. We're jerks.
Totally.
Okay. But it doesn't seem like that was really our goal. It does seem that the Western countries were trying to protect against Germany doing something bad in this, taking advantage of the situation. Okay. It does seem like they would have been happy.
Yeah, it would have been a nice side effect.
Yeah, and it's not to say that they didn't do anything that would try to make that happen, but I don't think it was their main objective.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. The Civil War overall, so those are kind of like the big sides, and it's complicated troop movements, all this blah.
Yeah. Did they call themselves those colors? They're like, we're the Green Army.
The Red Army did. I don't think the other groups did.
Okay, they just did that for labeling.
The White Army may have, but I'm not certain on that.
Okay. That's funny to me.
At that point, millions of people die in this conflict. There's, bloody battles, and there's also things called the terrors.
Okay.
All right. You have something called the Red Terror and something called the White Terror.
Okay.
They both happened at the same time. And this just refers to the violent atrocities committed by each side, the Red Army and the Bolshevik factions, and the White Army or the monarchist factions. Both sides were fucking each other up.
Okay.
Not just on the battlefield, but each other's civilians.
Pillaging and shit.
Yeah.
Ugh. Okay.
2 million are killed in the fighting. 9 million die in famine.
Jesus.
And a typhus epidemic. What do we need right now? We need some typhus,
Just throw it in there.
It's really bloody.
Yeah.
And we don't want to say that either side was really any better in terms of the atrocity side.
Yeah.
Both sides. Here's a quote from Lenin that's really, how we were looking at Karl Marx last time and saying, damn, Karl, you shouldn't have said that.
Oh, no.
Here's one. It's not as problematic in terms of just judging people in that way, but it's very violent. And,
lay it on me.
You can argue like, well, he had to do what he had to do, but
he didn't have to do that.
This is pretty violent. He's writing a telegram to his commanders in the various fields of operation. He says, "Comrades, the insurrection of 5 kulak districts." Kulaks refer to, side note here, he didn't write that part. Kulaks refer to,
by the way,
refer to like wealthier landowners kind of, but they're not like big
farmers,
lords.
Basically.
Small scale farmers, yeah.
Okay.
But people
maybe they own their own land or something?
They own their own land.
Okay.
They own their own land. They do not want to give their land up. They do not want to take part in the Bolshevik government because they think they're coming for their land, that sort of thing.
Okay.
The insurrection of 5 kulak districts should be pitilessly suppressed. The interests of the whole revolution require this because the last decisive battle with the kulaks is now underway everywhere. An example must be demonstrated. And then he numbers the next part. He says, basically, do these things.
Yeah.
Number 1, hang. Absolutely hang in full view of the people. no fewer than 100 known kulaks, filthy rich men, bloodsuckers. 2. Publish their names. 3. Seize all grain from them. 4. Designate hostages in accordance with yesterday's telegram.
Wow.
Concludes with, do it in such a fashion that for hundreds of miles around the people will see, tremble, know, shout. Strangling is done and will continue for the blood-sucking kulaks.
Wow, 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 wow. Okay.
He says, telegraph the receipt and the implementation. Yours, Lenin.
Bye.
P.S. Use your toughest people for this.
Jesus. Okay, he had no chill.
Yeah, that's a good, that's emblematic of the Red Terror there. Again, there's also something called the White Terror where the monarchists were doing this sort of thing where they had control.
Yeah.
Both sides were willing to terrorize the population.
The bad people
to
on
get
both
them to
sides.
stop. Well, yeah. I think in this case, there were bad actions taken by both sides in the pursuit of keeping their side under control or their territory,
Yeah.
Putting down spies, saboteurs, all that. Real or imagined.
Damn.
Very bloody. So when you argue with the people who are like, communism killed millions, they're getting some of their millions from this. They're also getting some of their millions from famine and from typhus.
Yeah.
So unless you think that these guys were also operating a biological weapons lab.
No, never know. Who can say?
Eventually the Bolsheviks win the Russian Civil War.
Okay.
They are able to crush the various groups and get the foreign countries to get the hell out. Eventually they're able to declare, instead of being the Russian Soviet, they come up with a more complicated name, the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic.
That's a bad name.
It's not a great one. So
They got to work on their branding.
by that point, they change it to the Soviet Union.
There you
Instead
go.
of just Russia,
Catchier.
they have Ukraine, they have Mongolia, they have all these other satellite countries that they're technically their own Soviet republic. And this is the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the USSR, right, the Soviet Union.
I didn't know that included multiple countries.
Technically, yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be a lot more federal, a lot more like each country does its own thing. But eventually it is very, very centralized.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you do your own thing, but you don't. You actually just take orders.
Yeah, not really. Yeah. Okay.
So very complicated history, very quickly glossed over.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was good, though. I got a good sense of what's going on.
Were you interested also in, what the Soviet Union...
Yeah. What'd they do? Was it bad?
What did they do and was it bad? They have different eras.
Okay.
Of leadership. You start with Lenin. Eventually, they're led by Stalin.
Okay.
The Soviet Union definitely struggled when it started. Obviously, as you can see in the revolution there, that was rough. That was difficult.
Yeah, it's a rough first day on the job.
And they didn't always make nice decisions, as we saw.
No.
They continue to deal with famines. They continue to deal with industrial output shortages.
Okay.
They're operating at something like 13% of the capacity
Jesus.
they had before when the Tsar was in charge.
Why was that?
So much of the infrastructure and stuff had been destroyed.
Oh, and also a lot of people died.
A lot of people died. Chaos in general. So it was rough trying to get back on their feet. Throughout its history, the Soviet Union made a ton of mistakes.
Okay.
And one thing that I don't think it's very useful for leftists or communists or socialists to try to do is to spend a lot of energy defending everything that the Soviet Union did.
Yeah.
Or saying that that's definitely a model for what future socialist or communist movements want to make happen in other countries.
Okay, cool.
Because, it did a lot of things well. It raised literacy rates.
Yeah, that's something I want a future episode on, because that's something I studied, in design history, was how they had to, teach a completely illiterate population how to read very quickly. And they did a lot of that through, poster design and stuff like that.
Oh, man. I love their propaganda posters, dude. Those are...
Yeah, no, they had some
Those are cool.
hot design.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know they were... That's awesome. Yeah, I can see how that would work. That's because they're very stylized. They're just you get it. I get it.
You get
not
the meaning.
reading Russian.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was their whole thing, was they used all these Gestalt tricks basically to get people to understand the meaning of things. They needed to tell workers who were illiterate, hey, don't touch this, it's hot, or whatever, stuff like that. And they did that mostly through design, which is really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, literacy rates, childcare.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this.
Trying to liberate women from the need to have to be the ones, doing unpaid labor and raising your children and homemaking and all that. Especially in the earlier days. Before Stalin takes the realm, he's kind of backward on all this by the time he's in power. But before that, there was a big push for women's, equality.
Cool.
Yeah. Stalin's a really big problem in just
Not
for the
so
Soviets.
great.
Like, he's shitty. And
Okay.
people who say Stalin did nothing wrong are wrong.
Oh yeah, I think so.
Those are what we call tankies. Not good. Don't do that.
Okay. I'm Googling Stalin to see what he looks like. I don't remember.
He has a caterpillar mustache.
Oh, that one. Okay, yeah.
Kind of a large nose, caterpillar mustache, bushy eyebrows.
The pompadour.
Yeah.
He was hot when he was young.
He was. Oh, man. Yeah.
Sorry.
I used to use that in my world history class, introducing, we're talking about the Russian Revolution show. This guy's like, who's that guy? That guy's like an actor or something. Who's this guy? I'm like, no, that's, and then the next slide's
Stalin.
Joseph Stalin. Like, ooh. Like
That's
it's the
great.
opposite of a glow up, I guess.
Yeah. A glow down.
Yeah. Stalin was shitty. I don't think leftists really do themselves a favor if they're like, oh no, Stalin, not so bad. I mean, he did help kick some Nazi ass, which is good,
Yeah, I'm
He
into
was
that.
instrumental in defeating the Nazis, which is awesome. The Red Army really helped win that. That's one of their major accomplishments is, winning World War II.
Yeah, they did it. They did the work.
Yeah. Raising living standards for people. People like to nowadays say, man, look at those horrible concrete boxes, huge brutalist apartment blocks and stuff that blight the landscape of that, these big, terrible housing units that they have. But I mean, that was providing houses for people. People still live in those today and are like glad that they have houses. And
Yeah.
it was a social provision of something that, in America oftentimes is done. I mean, it's done the same way. Like if we do public housing or something, we try to put it up as cheaply as possible, as rundown
for
as
sure.
possible, and even then we still have so many more homeless in the streets. Like, I don't think that's a unique criticism of them. So I think they did have some major accomplishments. I think that the Soviet Union, however, did not stay true to its initial promise of workers being in charge of their government.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. Was that actually communism, what they were doing?
No.
Okay.
And they knew it wasn't communism for sure.
What did they say it was?
So they were trying to implement socialism.
Okay.
And they're initially in their constitution, they actually state their goals as being in line with the Communist Manifesto.
Yeah, that was another question I had was did Lenin read Marx and what was his feelings on it?
He did read Marx. His whole notion with the Bolshevik party, it was kind of like a change from what Marx was doing without trying to refute it. So he said, there's no way that Russia's just going to figure this out and get a united proletarian class quickly enough. You got to have a vanguard party. You got to have a small group of people dedicated to just doing this revolution shit, to get them stirred up.
Yeah.
To make the revolution happen. That was kind of one of his major changes to it. But no, here's that thing. The Russian Constitution in 1918, their new thing, put in there specifically in Article 18, declaring labor to be the duty of all citizens of the republic, from each according to their ability to each according to their contribution. That middle stage.
Yeah.
The ultimate aims of the state were outlined as the abolition of the exploitation of people by people. So just talking about wage slavery and stuff like that. They were explicitly trying to be socialist.
Okay.
Remember our ideas that, or what we were talking about, Marx's ideas that the state should eventually fall away. Initially, you should have the workers be in charge of the state, doing things to end capitalism and end the class distinctions so that eventually you don't need any of that.
Yeah, so they didn't do that part.
Right. The Soviets did take power and take charge of a government, but they did not use the government effectively to eliminate class antagonisms, because you still had social classes.
Okay.
They didn't do enough to eliminate, despite the Red Terror and all that, they didn't get rid of the bourgeoisie. You still had people, you still had class distinctions. In their case, you had kind of a party elite. You had a bureaucracy.
Okay.
People working for the government, having way more privileges, being richer than other people.
Yeah. That's definitely
based on that.
The message that I've gotten about it is that it was very corrupt or whatever.
Yeah. it was. And government officials had just had so much more than regular people. And in a government like that, you would think that would not be the case.
Yeah. It's like the antithesis of what they should be going for.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think that they did enough to make government accountable to or actually literally in control of the workers. I think that they...
Yeah, that's what it seems like. It's not really a truly worker-led government. It's just a government.
Yeah, and this is a criticism that's leveled at Marxist-Leninists. This is just people who follow Lenin's ideas of what Marxism should be. And there's an idea of theirs called democratic centralism. Democratic centralism is something that's supposed to govern a communist party or when you're dealing with you and your communist buddies and you're trying to decide what you're going to do as a political party or as a group.
Okay.
Democratic centralism says you're free to express yourselves freely with each other. Like call somebody a fucker, tell them their idea is bullshit, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And really be passionate about it.
Yeah.
And then y'all decide what you're going to, you vote on what you're going to do. And once you've decided that, shut your mouth and do it.
Oh, okay.
All right. Once you've decided, if you lose the vote, hey man, you lost the vote. That's what we decided to do. Devote yourself to doing this.
Yeah.
All right. And in theory, I think that's kind of a good idea to operate a close, to operate what they were doing. Because you got to understand, what did we just describe? They were an underground movement, a criminal movement.
Yeah.
They were operating with the Tsar, trying to throw them in jail, trying to execute them.
Yeah. And even when they got in power, they were in a fucking war. Like,
this is shaped by someone whose Lenin's brother was executed by the Tsar for revolutionary activity when he was a teenager. This is formative for him that, hey, you got to keep things tight, close. Everybody's after you,
okay. So as a result of being so like kind of secretive and very tight knit, once they got in power, they're like, we're not going to stop doing that.
They were secretive and tight knit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially early on in their activities, they were funded by criminal activity. Stalin and Stalin had an outfit, some people that he ran with basically as a criminal organization. He had like a bank robbers group. They would go literally rob banks and rob imperial stagecoaches that were transporting money between banks. They would rob those and use that money
hilarious.
To fund the party. Lenin at some point was like, hey guys, stop robbing banks and stuff. And Stalin was like, okay, but he would still give him money and just not ask questions.
That's hilarious. That's kind of
cool. So I guess what I mean is applying that idea of democratic centralism to a big country nationwide is not conducive to democracy.
Okay. Yeah, because then it's like you can't question and you can't,
There's not as and when dissent gets characterized as counter-revolutionary activities and gets you thrown in jail.
Yeah, okay. So that sounds like that's the main problem because that's seems to be one of the main bad things that happen to people.
Yeah. So it's kind of a liberal notion maybe, and maybe that's where we're coming from, is from an American bourgeois democratic background saying like, oh, people should have free speech and these sorts of things. I don't know. I guess they should. I think they should.
Yeah, I think they should.
I think a government should be trying to do a good enough job to where they're not so worried that people are criticizing them.
Yeah, exactly.
Because someone's always going to criticize you, and if you're doing a good enough job, that's not going to lead to you getting your ass thrown out.
Yeah, hopefully there are enough people who aren't criticizing you. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you are doing that bad of a job, maybe they should throw you out.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that they could have used some more dissent.
Yeah, we've already discussed this as a future episode idea, but I'd love to do just like the myths of the Soviet Union, because I think that's something we're fed a lot. It's like, what was it actually like to live there? Stuff like that.
Right, and there are different periods too, because for people growing up in like the 50s and 60s, things were way more open compared to what they were in Stalin's era. So when we think of, the Soviet Union, one big gulag, everybody's just toiling away and constantly. Exactly. It's 1984, but all over the place, No, that was maybe during the Stalin era, and that was bad. Stalin was purging people and killing people, and everything was bad then. Not to say people didn't get arrested for political reasons in other eras, but it wasn't so.
It wasn't so extreme.
Yeah.
Okay. That's helpful in this framing.
That's a little bit about the Soviet Union. The big piece of advice I would give you as far as when people say, oh, Russia, it didn't work, is A, we don't have to defend everything the Soviet Union does, but also B, the Soviet Union was, and any state like it, any state that tries to really put, workers in charge, really overthrow capitalists, that sort of thing, that gets revolutionary with it, they face resistance from other countries.
Oh,
when we talk about how bad things are in Cuba, we've got a huge embargo in Cuba.
Yeah. It's not like we didn't help make it bad.
Yeah, we bully other countries into participating in that. When we talk about same thing with Venezuela. Okay, well, hey, man, what are we doing to them?
Yeah.
Any of these countries that you look at and say, why are things so bad there? One of the big reasons is the world is arrayed against them. It doesn't forgive what they do necessarily. I mean, North Korea,
Yeah, not good.
I mean, any communist quote unquote state that is trying to do these things, they're facing big time resistance from people.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. And I don't know, like in Nicaragua and stuff, we fucking stopped that. Again, I learned all my history from television. That one's from the Americans.
Nice. Yeah. That was really well done. That whole.
Yeah, that's a good series. Carrie Russell's so pretty.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, series. I was meaning that story arc, but yeah, that series is great.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I think that kind of addresses.
No, I think it does.
Topic.
I have a good grasp of what happened.
All right. You want to talk about Organization Corner?
I do, and I'm excited about this one because we get to use a listener question. Lily wrote into us and asked, what exactly is a wildcat strike? Is there no limit to the different kinds of strikes, or just 2 or 3? I've been hearing this phrase more often recently and would love to know more. So thank you, Lily, for writing in. First of all, that made our day.
Yeah, for real.
And I would like to say I had never heard of a wildcat strike, but I think it sounds cool. So, Grady, what's a wildcat strike?
Well, I guess the coolest version would be if you Animorph style into wildcats and then took on your bosses.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be neat. And the second coolest is if you worked at a circus, maybe you set the wildcats free and they took over.
Yes.
But no, a wildcat strike in reality refers to an unauthorized strike. All right. Unauthorized strike. Yeah. Okay. Typically, if you are already a member of a union, strikes are planned by union leadership. A union will hold a vote and say, hey, do we think we need to go on strike? Our contract just went up and they're not negotiating a good contract for our next time. Should we, for the next time period, should we go on strike? Union membership and leadership will vote.
You agree to it.
They'll agree to go on strike, or they'll be like, nah, let's not go on strike. So basically, anytime there's not formal authorization by the union of a strike, it's called a wildcat strike.
Does it also count as one is if you don't have a union?
If you don't have a union, also, it's counted as a wildcat strike. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I did some reading on strikes because you sent me some stuff as homework. And so I kind of want to talk about we talked about striking a lot in this episode already with Russia, but I had some questions, I guess. I didn't realize there were so many rules around striking, and it seems very fucked up. Okay, I want you to break down this rule. Let me pull up that Wikipedia page again. While I'm doing that, give the general definition of striking for me.
Okay, yeah. So a strike is when, just to pan back a little from what a wildcat strike is, what a strike is when workers en masse refuse to work, or mass refusal of employees either at a particular workplace, a particular company, or a particular industry refuse to work, thereby denying their employers profit. Because the employers, even if they don't pay them, they're not getting that excess labor that they're not paying for, so they're not making profit. The idea being that if you shut that down, if you choke off their profit, eventually the employers will have to come to the table and give in to certain demands, give in to higher wages, better working conditions, ending unsafe practices, or discrimination, or whatever it is that you're demanding. You're basically taking your workplace hostage, taking your boss hostage, basically, and extracting demands from them.
Cool. I found my question.
All right.
This sentence appeared a few times in this. I mean, full disclosure, this is the Wikipedia article for strike action.
Wikipedia, great resource, by the way. Use it.
Yes.
Don't tell your teachers, but use it.
I mean, it's sourced if it's a well-written article. All right. So this appeared a few times, and I don't fucking understand it. Striking for economic reasons, like protesting workplace conditions or supporting a union's bargaining demands, allows an employer to hire permanent replacements. The replacement worker can continue in the job, and then the striking worker must wait for a vacancy. But if the strike is due to unfair labor practices, the strikers replaced can demand immediate reinstatement when the strike ends. So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's like, okay, you're striking because the factory is unsafe or something. Then you can get your job back. But if it's because you want more money, then you don't necessarily get your job back. Because it also says, like, permanent replacements. Like, as far as I'm concerned, that's the same thing as getting fired. If someone said, hey, you've been permanently replaced, like, that's not a good thing. It seems like a bullshit legal definition.
I think that you're right in that interpretation here. So, okay, yeah, there's a couple different caveats, I guess, right? According to this, you have the right to strike for all these reasons: better wages, more benefits, better or safer working conditions. You can't be fired. Now, if the thing that you choose to strike about is, and choose to strike about is kind of loaded language in itself, but if you're striking for economic reasons, higher wages, benefits, that sort of thing, then yeah, the permanent replacement. I mean, you're right. You don't get fired. You technically, they could still, but they can continue in the job, and you must wait for a vacancy. This
bullshit.
Could mean that, like, I don't know, depending on the pay structure, like, you might still get paid some sort of a wage, you be on the payroll. But the reason that they're allowing the employer to hire a permanent replacement is that the employer rather can still make a profit.
That's so shitty.
They do give you the handout that, hey, if it's due to, unfair labor practices, something really considered bad rather than just classic old wage theft.
Yeah, but like, that's so bad. Like, of course I shouldn't work somewhere that's not safe. Like, I shouldn't have to strike for that.
Right. Yeah. And then, once the strike's over, then you get your job back, neat. Yeah. This is the National Labor Relations Board or the National Labor Relations Act that set that up is a vast improvement to what it was.
Okay.
And could theoretically be used to advance workers' interests.
Yeah.
The problem with this, just like the problem with any sort of liberal reform, is that, because, I mean, this was passed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Like, this is in terms of American politics, kind of a left-leaning act. The problem is, of course, it's implemented by the government. Mm-hmm. And a government that is not particularly democratically responsive to the people, and to workers' interests. So when they're running it, who are they running it for? Marx says that the modern executive is, just kind of an appendage of the capitalist class.
Exactly, yeah. So whenever they whenever they determine what exactly is unfair labor practices, they're going to do it in a way that benefits, like, their fucking donors.
Yeah. And unfair labor practices don't include paying your workers too little for the work that that they're doing. As long as you're paying them starvation wages, you're still fine,
Jeez.
So it's a very narrow definition of how can you do wrong to your workers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's bad.
That is, yeah.
I'd love to dive into, like, U.S. labor law, like, and how it, just from this cursory look, does not seem to help workers.
It does not. It can. It has the potential to. And it does prevent some of the harsher forms of mistreatment that could go on.
Yeah.
It does. It does get in the way of that. Because, I mean, you got to imagine, without this, I mean, what would they do?
Child labor.
Without even this in the way. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, things could be a lot worse, and they have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
But I think most people, most leftists especially, would agree that it's not enough.
Yeah, yeah. So back to the organization corner, we also wanted to cover how to support a strike and how to help workers win.
Yeah. And I thought this tied in pretty well with Lily's question about wildcat strikes. Because wildcat strikes, any sort of unauthorized strikes, for most unions in the United States, that includes what's called a sympathy strike. Nothing's going wrong at your workplace, but some other company you deal with, their workers are on strike, and you go on strike in sympathy with them. That's a form of a wildcat strike because it's not authorized. that's one way that, workers can help each other out, showing solidarity with that. But I found an interesting article that had a lot of ways that people in general, not just workers in a workplace, but people can support workers who are on strike.
It's by Chamtali Hook, who is a professor of labor law at a public university in New York. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Knows what she's talking about.
I thought this was a great article because it talked about ways that people can help. A lot of us are not. I'm not in a unionized workplace. A lot of people in right-to-work states don't have unions. But this is, I think, an easy way for someone to support people who are taking actions to help themselves, help the cause of labor and of workers in general.
Cool. So let's dive into these. Again, you can find this article at lawatthemargins.com. But yeah, we're just going to kind of go through them because I think they're helpful. The first one is share information. This is definitely something that I try to do. So that can be something as simple as sharing it on social media, but you can also like talk to your friends about it and tell them like why people are striking, stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's good, especially in anything that is public facing. So when teachers go on strike in Chicago, people will say, "Oh, those poor kids." When public transit workers go on strike, they'll say, "Oh man, I can't get anywhere." You really have to work with those situations and to show people, hey, yeah, man, I know this is inconvenient, but these people deserve to make, to have dignity at work and make enough money and all this.
Exactly.
Whereas, if it's a factory and it's not necessarily inconveniencing people, you don't have to, struggle so hard to get people to realize it's good.
Or like with the recent Amazon and Instacart one, just saying like, hey, don't shop there just for like a day. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Let's see. Number 2 is honk. If you actually pass a physical picket line, you can kind of show support. Yeah, if you're just walking by, you can wave, give them a thumbs up, whatever. Kind of leads into number 3 as well. Walking with the workers. If you're out there and you see people fighting for their rights, join them, man.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't have to be out there all day like they do, and you can just express that you're with them and express to other people that this is a sizable movement and people support it.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm like mourning with the coronavirus is that like I don't know how to protest. Not that I did a bunch of protesting before. I would like to do more, but now it's like, well, shit.
Yeah, that's fair.
The next one is about music, which I want you to cover because you know a lot about labor music, and I think that's going to be a future episode too.
Oh man, yeah. There's old songs that are, I guess people don't make as many labor songs nowadays, but one of the great things about the labor movement in the turn of the century was that they were great at stealing songs. Like they would just steal popular songs of the day, which were mostly hymns, like actual church hymns and stuff. That's why in the old times they would call them the union hymns, because they just took those songs and rewrote the lyrics
hilarious.
for union stuff. So if people, especially people with more of a Protestant upbringing, a lot of these are old Protestant hymns and things that are converted into union songs. Kind of cool. But there's pro-labor music and stuff that are more modern as well.
Nice. The next one is signing their petition and pledging your support. And the one after that, I kind of already mentioned, is social media. So yeah, just follow them and all that good stuff.
Yeah. And signing a petition is, a really easy step to do. Add your name to this list, sort of thing. People do that by email now too.
Yeah.
The social media, it's kind of like earlier where it said share information. It's just a way to signal boost, sort of.
This next one, that would be really powerful if you could do that. Providing child or elder care. Like, that's huge. Like, these people are taking time off work, to go strike. They're not taking time off work to go home and take care of their kids. So, yeah, helping with that would be great.
More established unions have these sorts of things set up. Like, they have provisions and stuff already for that. I know that in the teacher strikes in West Virginia that happened, maybe last year, I think it was, or year before, something like that. They kind of had to set this stuff up at a grassroots community level, like from scratch,
Yeah.
But the community was able to kind of come together and help with that. And it kind of ties into the next one, bringing food, bringing snacks, donating groceries, looking out for people who are striking. When an organized union goes into a strike, they do have a strike fund, and workers do take home a portion of what their pay would normally be. It's only a portion. It's not.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not what they would normally be making.
And if they're striking for higher wages, that's going to be not much then.
Yeah.
A portion of not enough is not enough.
So that can definitely help. And the last thing on their fundraising, that can also kind of help with this, help keep the strikes going. The big contest between in a strike, and the reason strikes either succeed or not, is based on who runs out of resources first. The capitalist has to make sure they keep enough profits to keep either themselves in business or their stockholders happy. They have to keep the public from turning on them and keep the PR going, make it look like they're not evil McGee twirling his mustache. They have to keep those things going and not be too big of a burden on the overall economy to have like the government step in and take over or something.
Yeah.
On the worker side, they have to have enough money to survive, and the willpower to stay out there, and the solidarity needed to where you don't have, strike breakers or scabs coming in and taking their jobs and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And they have to have the public support too. If the public turns on them and says those lazy workers need to get back to work, it's, no way.
Yeah. The last one is a don't, which is don't cross a picket line. Don't do that. That's bad.
Never cross a picket line. If you've done it at some point in your life before this, unknowingly, all is forgiven. But
yeah.
In the future,
we were raised Catholic. You got a freebie.
Yeah. Go forth. You're fine. But do not ever do it again. And to those of you who have never done it, great job. Continue that streak until your last day. Never cross a picket line. It's the worst thing you can do to workers. And I thought this was a great way to characterize it. It's demoralizing to see people walk past you as you are on the street fighting for basic benefits to be treated with, and to be treated with respect. Like, you don't want to be out there and saying, I deserve enough to a wage that's good enough to live on. Mm-hmm. And people are like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to the store. Like,
yeah, that would suck.
Don't do that. Stand with the workers. Don't show the bosses that you care more about their conveniences than their workers.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, hopefully that answered your question, Lily. I would also like to add that if anyone has a question, please email us at teachmecommunism@gmail.com. We would love to do a Q&A episode in the future. So we're going to try to start stockpiling those. So send those in.
All right, cool. I think we wrapped that up pretty well. What do you want to learn about next time?
I want to learn about an issue that I think people are asking themselves a lot lately. What with rent being due and a lot of people out of work, which is, why are landlords bad?
Okay, I love that. Why are landlords bad? A shorter episode will be, what's good about landlords.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, we can get into that. That's wonderful. Okay, the question of landlords. Can I be a landlord?
Yeah.
What if I'm subletting my, okay, let's do it. Property.
That's a lot to cover. Property. All right.
Got it.
Yeah, as always, follow us on social. We are on Instagram at Teach Me Communism. Twitter is Teach Communism. I already mentioned the Gmail, but yeah, send in those questions. They make us happy.
And we'll answer them.
We will answer them, as you can see or hear. Oh, yeah, and give us a review on Apple Podcasts or I guess wherever. I don't know if you can do reviews on other ones, but that's the big one because it makes us feel good.
It does. We love them.
Yeah,
we print them off, we frame them, hang them on our walls.
I cherish them. I sleep with them under my pillow. So yeah, thank you for teaching me communism this week, Grady.
All right. Yeah, anytime. And guys, tune in for the next episode next week of Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session.
All right.